I'd like to welcome you to the last panel today before the cocktail hour. So thank you for joining us. This is a big commitment on your part as the audience. We have some really amazing entrepreneurs and women who are helping female and other entrepreneurs get to the next level on this panel. I've been in the digital media business, starting with film and television, traditional media, and have been running incubators in digital media most of my career at KPMG and then my own Hollywood portfolio. And then we have Marlene with RGH Entertainment. She's in development, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what her company does.
Hi there. My name is Marlene Sharp, and I work for a global multimedia company that specializes in animation. So the name of the company is RGH Entertainment, and we have several different business divisions, but they all relate to animation in different ways. So we do theme parks, we do feature films, games and apps, TV series, and we also do distribution and licensing and merchandising of original projects and co-productions.
And it's partnering with major studios in some of these distribution strategies.
Yes. We have a different distribution strategy for each project, so we handle things on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, and then we have Phoenix here with Phoenix Gonzalez, co-founder of Dot Studio, which just launched its platform on September 30th. So tell us about it.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for coming. My name is Phoenix Gonzalez, like what she said. We are an entertainment technology company, and I'm one of the co-founders. Our focus is video delivery. We give anyone from a content creator all the way to a multi-channel network the ability to go multi-platform, meaning that we give them a management dashboard that gives them the ability to put up their own video on demand, their own ad serving, as well as launch their own microsites, their own channels in Facebook, their own channels inside of Roku, Samsung, or LG, all owner operated and controlled from one dashboard so that they can track all of their monetization, their fan engagement, and be able to control their IP from one place, pushing back out to platforms, like I said, Facebook, as well as YouTube. So we were founded in 2010, and I'm one of three co-founders. It's my partner, Joe Pasquale, and my other partner, Selena Pascalides. We're a Canadian-based company, and we have offices in Los Angeles. And we launched on the 30th of September. Thank you.
I wish you were on my panel on Monday about creative storytelling, because we had people with 22 million views on YouTube saying, how do I make money?
I can help you with that.
They're in the audience. So that was the funniest thing of it all. Now we have the answer on this third panel. All right, we have Jana Cook in case you need a physical space to shoot your film or television program, or you need a physical space in any way for any event or venue. She started a company that's called Event Up.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Jana Cook, and I'm the CEO of Event Up. And Event Up is an online platform that connects people looking for venues with physical venues. So we have about 10,000 venues across the US that are signed up. So if you want to find a beach home in Malibu to have your wedding, or you're looking for a conference space for something like Digital Hollywood, you can just go on there and find what you're looking for.
And maybe next year we won't be here at this.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's not tell the host. So Valerie Alexander is the writer-director of, she owns a company with her husband called Goalkeeper Films, but she's written a book about female women in corporate America. And tell us a little bit about that, maybe.
Okay. Goalkeeper Films is just my loan out. My husband has his own separate loan out.
Excuse me.
I started my career in the Silicon Valley as a securities lawyer. I was one of the lead attorneys for E-Trade when they went public, and then very quickly went to venture capital, investment banking, and I was an executive in an internet company. And then my mom got sick. She was back in Indiana, so I cashed out. I went back to Indiana, took care of her. She got better. And then in my absence, the Silicon Valley fell apart.
We know why.
Yes. But no, the first bubble burst and there was literally nothing in the Silicon Valley to go back to from what I had done. So I had a little bit of money in the bank. So I said, I think I'll just go start making movies. So I moved to LA. I didn't know anybody. I started writing screenplays. One of them was good. And so a career started. 3 of them were not. So I became a screenwriter and director. And then my union went on strike and I turned 40. So that career kind of went away. And it's happening sort of, but in the background. In the meantime, I was asked by the LA Film School to give a talk there on how women can succeed in Hollywood. And so I gave this talk, and it's called How Women Can Succeed in Hollywood Despite Having Female Brains. And it's about the evolution of the brain and how that affects the corporate structure. That then became How Women Can Succeed in the Workplace, because that talk then was at other schools, and then it became at like law firms and other conferences and things like that. And so I had so many people ask me, can we just buy this as a book? And so I finally wrote it as a book. It will be released on Monday. But
it's all news
you
at
can
the
find it on
conference.
Amazon now. If you order it today, you will get it on Monday.
You can pre-sell, you can pre-buy, kind of
Yes.
like the U2 album. It's going to show up in your iPhone.
It will show up. But unlike the U2 album, it will only show up if you've actually bought it.
And then if you want to know if your screenplay is actually producible, you can talk to Elsa Rama, who I happened to meet when she was just, can I tell this story? She was coming up from San Diego, and I went to UC San Diego, and she said to me, I was running an incubator, I think at KPMG, or maybe it was after that. And she said, I'm going to be a transactional attorney. I'm going to be putting together film and television deals, and I'm moving up from San Diego just to do that. And she is. So 10 years later, she's got her own firm, and it's doing just that.
Yeah, so 10 years ago, I started my own law firm, and Ramo Law is of 7 attorneys and a full-time packaging and sales exec, and our firm focuses and exclusively represents producers and financiers in film, television, and digital content. We kind of run the gamut. So to give you an idea, we worked on Fury, which is just coming out with Brad Pitt, and Selena Gomez's Rudderless, but we also work on shows on MTV and Netflix, and represent even Swamp People on Discovery. So we're kind of all over the spectrum. They're our most challenging clients sometimes. And my firm is primarily women, although we like to hire men and have and continue to do so. And I was actually just recently featured in Variety's Women Impact List.
This is the power panel today, closing it out with a power. Jamila Jackson has her own company, which I really love, the card and the name, The Velvet Rope. It's a PR agency for just that, right? Behind the velvet rope.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't have quite an interesting twist. Mine is pretty straightforward. These ladies have some amazing, companies. But what I do is develop and implement public relations, publicity, marketing campaigns, and events for companies like this. Hint, hint, Phoenix Valley. So, once you launch when you want to launch your company or product and get publicity and roll out a complete campaign and execute it, I am the person that you call. So that's what I do. And primarily my clients are consumer, lifestyle, entertainment, had some fashion and beauty clients as well. Pretty much across the board.
This is really a fascinating panel. And I want to ask all of you a question, and you're welcome to talk about the founding of RGH. What kind of sparked up the founding of this company, and why did you decide to start it or join it versus going to maybe one of the larger corporate situations that we've all been in? First. Yeah.
Okay.
You're just so close.
So I am not one of the founders of RGH, so I'm going to speak on behalf of her. The CEO / co-founder of our company, Rhonda Ayubi, started this business in 1994 in Amman, Jordan. So she's Jordanian, and she still lives in Jordan, and that's where the headquarters of our company is. And she is a force of nature, and she will never take no for an answer. And that is the way that this business has succeeded for 20 years. Her entire life, she was told, no, 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 you can't do this, you can't do that because you're a woman, you're in this part of the world, you want to be in show business, what have you. She was always told no, and she just didn't listen. So she started the company as an educational software company. And she and her business partner made CD-ROMs for kids, and they did it on a very modest budget. They used internet cafes as their, they kind of did the early version of crowdsourcing, and they grew that humble business into the largest provider of educational software in the Middle East and North Africa.
Wow.
And from there, she grew the company. Of course, the educational component was the primary focus in the beginning, but she always saw entertainment as a logical counterpart to what she was doing, especially for kids. She wanted to always do good things for kids and families. So in the early 2000s, she convinced the board of directors to invest in entertainment. And the way that she went about it was to make strategic partnerships with big studios on iconic properties. And the first alliance that she made was with MGM on Pink Panther. So we did 26 half hours of Pink Panther and Pals in partnership with MGM. We did a Pink Panther Christmas special called The Very Pink Christmas. And then we also operated 6 Pink Panther stores. 5 of them are in Dubai. I guess Pink Panther is very popular there. And
There's
then
a lot of real estate in Dubai.
yeah, just the mall, the Dubai Mall itself could handle probably 5 stores. But and then there's 1 store in Jordan. So we had this alliance with MGM, and from that we've grown into other partnerships. We just released our first feature film this past summer called Postman Pat, the movie. And our partner on that is DreamWorks Classics. Our partner was Classic Media, and then they were bought by DreamWorks halfway through our production process, and then our partner became DreamWorks. So you know, it turned out to be a very positive experience, terrifying at first, but then very positive. And we're working on we have 2 other movies in production right now. The most exciting of those 2 is called High in the Clouds, and it's based on a children's book that Paul McCartney wrote. And he's very hands-on in the process. He's been to our office several times. It's really weird to see Paul McCartney in Woodland Hills, as our office neighbors can tell you, because they wander out and try to get autographs. So we're doing this animated movie based on Paul McCartney's book, and he's writing the music. And then we have another non-Paul McCartney movie in the works as well.
And the other.
Yeah, and the other, yes, it's a Santa origin story called The Santa Story, but it doesn't have the same kind of bells and whistles that a Paul McCartney movie has. So, but we do animation for lots of different platforms. We have a themed entertainment division, as I had mentioned before, and we do games and apps. We also do the licensing and merchandising associated with all kids entertainment. Well, we've done web series. So the company's really diversified since its humble beginnings in 1994.
Now we see why some of the major studios are considering just going into comic book development for their movie production, because this stuff actually works.
Yeah, it's not easy by any stretch. It every day brings new challenges, and we have our company has concerns that maybe wouldn't affect people working at Disney or DreamWorks, because we monitor the Middle East situation very closely. We're developing a theme park on the Red Sea in Aqaba, Jordan, and that's where the warships were parked last year around this time, right? Where we're, doing feasibility studies and so forth. And so, we're an unusual company, but it's really inspirational to see what Rhonda has created from from such a small beginning to what it is now.
So from a garage in Canada, Phoenix, what happened with that?
Well, actually, so from a garage in Burbank.
Didn't you start in Canada?
Well, there's an interesting story around the whole Canada angle of our company. I am Canadian. I was born and raised Canadian. Our company started, my partner Joe, when my corporate alley job was kind of coming to an end, and I'm sure some of us have seen our corporate alley jobs coming to an end, and we're like, what am I going to do? My partner Joe looked at me and said, let's get into production. And I was like, okay, we could do production, because he had a post house. We created some content. We entered a competition with Darren. It was a Darren Aronofsky project with Sundance and YouTube. And in 3 days, we got to 170,000 hits, and we were second runner up across the world. We ended up going to Sundance, and after we left Sundance, we decided we were going to create a web series. Created a web series. This was in 2009, very beginning of 2009. UTA picked us up, and quickly realized, as we did the rounds of all the conferences and went out to all the different festivals, that we all were just really trying to figure out what digital was. Nobody knew what it was. But what we did identify is that if we stuck with just the YouTube model, that eventually it was going to run out, and we were only going to get so far. And so Joe, being the innovator that he is, looked at me and said, well, what are we going to, what should we do? And I said, well, let's look at what you're good at. And you're good at pipelines. And he came from digital distribution. So we visioned this product that we would, in the perfect world, we would want to use. And being filmmakers, we were like, we're going to figure it out, and we're going to deliver something of value to our peers. So we didn't know what that meant at the time. And we set out on the journey of understanding technology. So we started with learning from a data warehousing company what it was to collect analytics and data, because that was the buzz in 2009. Everyone needs to own their content and own their data. So we went and we learned about technology from the data warehousing perspective. And then from there, we met our partner probably a year after that. We had started prototyping and building, little prototypes and understanding data warehousing. And we met Selena, who was our third partner. We met her actually at a film festival, and we were representing some content there. And so after talking to Selena for about 10 minutes, and she was from Vancouver, I looked at her and I said, you're going to be our CFO. And she's like, I don't even know you. I said, don't worry, you're going to be our CFO. And I harassed her for 3 months. And finally, she decided that she was going to be our CFO. And me being Canadian, Joe having lived in Canada for many years, and Selena being in Canada, and knowing that there was a lot of tax credits in Canada, we decided to open the company in Vancouver, because Selena was going to be managing the money anyways. And Joe and myself were in Vancouver. I mean, we were in LA, and we were working out of our garage. So we call ourselves a garage startup. Humble beginnings, air conditioning didn't work, sweat our butts off, and worked really hard out of that garage. And with a PowerPoint presentation and the gumption to know what we were going to do, we went to the Center for Digital Media in Vancouver and started learning about algorithms. So first we learned about data, then we learned about algorithms. From that, we decided we were going to pitch a potential client, and we landed our first client off of a PowerPoint presentation, and that was a broadcaster. So a broadcaster is who basically funded our company and got us started. And we retained the IP, and they licensed the technology, and we built and customized with them in mind, understanding that we wanted to understand how broadcast wanted to deliver content online. So that's really where we got started. And then we brought on a film distributor, and we worked with them, and then understood what a film distributor would need in delivering content online. And then we worked with a content aggregator, and we worked with a couple of filmmakers. And over 3 years, we built our company and our product with our clients, customizing and building, and really trying to understand what it was that it was going to take to really deliver a platform that anyone could use. Last October, we met our investor. We started our investment round last year, and we met our investor here in Los Angeles in October. And on Christmas Eve of last year, the money was delivered in our bank account. So it was a nice Christmas present. And in February of this year, our team looked at us and said, well, we should rebuild the platform. And I cried. Oh, no. I was like, well, because, building a company and having to obviously start over again with a new product is not going to give us the opportunity to get to revenue yet. And that's where I really wanted to get after 3 years. I mean, we had made modest revenue, but to really get to where we wanted to get to. So we rebuilt the platform and we launched on September 30th. We were founded on September 1st, 2010. And on September 30th of 2014, we launched our product.
Hey, good job.
So
how's it going?
it's going great. I mean,
You all
obviously,
better sign up.
yeah, I mean, you can actually follow what's happening. One of the guys who creates the media for our company decided behind our backs to create a web series. So every week he launches a 4-minute web series based on what's happening around our office. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur is about not giving up and about being determined and knowing that you have a passion for something and that there's a need in the market for it and that you're not going to give up. And that's what we did.
And I love that story because it really is all the pivots and wrong turns and tries that create these companies, all the sweat and tears and, you know, over the many, many years that come to overnight success, right? So Jana, how was your company started? And was it in a foreign country or here in LA?
We're US-based. Yeah. My journey's been quite different. So I come from a technology background. I've successfully been part of 2 companies that have gone public. We focus on non-asset-based, highly scalable business models. And so our first one was Echo Global Logistics, which is a freight management company. And we built, you know, technology and tools around almost like a kayak for freight. And probably means nothing to anybody unless you're in manufacturing. So
here they know that.
Yeah, so it's proprietary technology that we built just in-house that we could use. You know, took the company public. The same gentleman that started Echo Global Logistics also had started The Point. And so I started working with The Point, which was a take action website. And we were $4 million in the hole. And they were like, Jana, try to sell advertising. So I called everybody under the moon for 1 week. And I was like, this isn't going to work. Like this has no legs. So I wasn't part of the conversation, but that turned into Groupon, which is, you know, a pretty big success story. So I was a vice president of business development for Groupon for quite some time, saw the company, you know, go public.
That was a pivot, amazing. Right?
What'd you say?
That was a pivot.
Yeah, that was a pivot. That was a big pivot. It was a pretty amazing pivot. So saw the company go public and decided, I mean, both times, like what I really like is the building phase, the startup phase, like trying to navigate what's important and prioritizing it. And so there was a company called EventUp, which was started in Santa Monica in 2011, that my founder had invested in, or Brad Keywell, my partner, had invested in. And we thought, well, this could be really cool, but the technology that they had built was just, you know, what wasn't going to make it what we saw the potential to be. So we purchased the company beginning of this year and have basically changed everything. We basically bought it for the data that it had. And it's been great. I mean, it's definitely a struggle. We changed the monetization model from the previous model. And, you know, we've had some great success with that, changed the look and feel, but we're really just starting, you know, to scratch the surface. So we need to hire more technology to be able to develop more tools, almost like a back-end CRM tool and some booking tools.
And it's the only, I would say, shared economy company on the panel, which is kind of the next. There's a wave of them coming out.
Oh yeah. I think that you know, everybody has like their own particular space that they're comfortable with and they know where to make money. I think it's something. EventUp is something obviously never going to be as large as Groupon, but that it's non-asset based, it's highly scalable. It's something that everybody can use, whether it's corporate consumers or whether it's you and I. And so, you know, that's kind of our niche and that's where we're going. And, you know, we've had some great traction. So.
And experience and background.
Yeah,
that all helps.
I've had a lot of experience.
Yeah.
To say the least.
So we're going to analyze all this experience now, right? Let's try to figure out how these brains are actually working and why are they working this way? Because they're quite exciting brains.
They are exciting brains, and they are female brains. And I'm going to just give a tiny. I said this before. I don't want to drop facts. But I'll just give you this one. Our brains started developing a prefrontal cortex about 2 million years ago. And our prefrontal cortex is what controls our emotions, our social interaction, and our decision making. Before the brain started developing a prefrontal cortex, we were already living in tribes and specializing by gender. And so when we started specializing by gender, the men were sent off to kill the meat and fight the wars, and the women were left behind to do absolutely everything else. Everything else. Every other thing was done by women. Men had 2 tasks: kill meat and fight wars. Because the female body is more biologically valuable to the tribe. If 10 men and 10 women are in a tribe and 10 women go off and only 2 come back, your tribe goes away. But if 10 men go off and only 2 come back, your tribe's fine. It's going to be able to reproduce itself. So the tribes that survived
This is being taped.
I know. But the tribes that survived were the ones that figured that out. The tribes that figured that out were the tribes that survived. And that was all evolution. And so after those 2 specialties came into play, which was about 2 million years ago, it took about 1.2 million years for our brains to triple in size and to create a processing center to control emotions, social interaction, and decision making. Since men were the only ones going out into the world, men were only meeting other men. And so when it stopped being about war and it became about commerce, they were developing systems of commerce based on the male brain, and is based on combat and competition, quick decision making, all of that. And so our brains developed for, yes, congratulations, man, good job. But our brains developed for building consensus. We were back at the campfire figuring out who's going to sew the loincloth, who's going to feed the children, who's going to do that. And so the things we got really good at, the things our brains are instinctively better at, are consensus building, agreement, cooperation, getting all the facts before making a decision. And so that's why that's why so many more women find success as entrepreneurs than in the corporate world, because we get to a point in the corporate world where what it takes to succeed is not only against what we're instinctively good at, but it's actually against what's good for the corporation. And it's really hard to balance that. So I think a lot of women go off and become entrepreneurs to say, all right, I can do this better. I can run a company better than this company's being run. And now statistics in companies that are run by women are proving that's right. That's right. So I guess I'm just blown away by the women on these panels. Also, I mean, I really am. Not just the whole Paul McCartney of it all, but I live near Woodland Hills, so next time he's around. But I am completely an entrepreneur by default. I didn't choose it at all. I would much rather show up, write things, and have somebody give me a check for them. That doesn't happen. So I have to now write things and go out and market them and create platforms and get, speaking gigs and what is it? There's a phrase for when you do many more things than just what you're, not just multitask, it's diversify. Thank you. What a writer. But I didn't want to do all that. But that is what it takes. And how many people in here are entrepreneurs? Okay. How many people would rather not be? Nobody wants to raise their hand.
Sometimes I would rather not be.
Yeah. It's so much better to just do what you're good at and get paid for it. But if you're not going to get paid for it, then go figure out how to do what you're good at and get paid for it, which is what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So God bless everyone.
Fascinating research, though. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Elsa, so what does it take to actually be a paid producer, director, writer in Hollywood? Because you make that happen for them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my success has been the success of my clients. So, back in 2004, people were able to shoot movies on digital versus 35 millimeter. And that technical shift caused a whole ripple effect of someone who was 22 being able to raise $100,000 and making a pretty good horror movie. And I just happened to be there at the nexus of that, where the big fat law firms wanted to charge the same price. And I was literally a girl on the Universal backlot in a trailer, and I didn't have a bathroom. So I used Desperate Housewives bathroom, and I was the girl on the backlot that was doing production legal for nothing. So what occurred to me in that phase is that producers are de facto entrepreneurs. They start up a company over and over again, and sometimes their startups are wonderful businesses. And great movies. Sometimes they're awful movies, but they're on Lifetime, so they're fine. They'll make their nut and they'll walk away. And sometimes it's the worst movie ever, and someone puts 20 million P&A behind it, and you're like, why would anyone do this? And you realize when you're in it all the political reasons why that happens. So I think the key to producers and people that can make it in the entertainment industry, male or female, and I definitely have a view of a female perspective as a producer or director, is you definitely just feel the difference in the gender perspective of a situation. But the common thread is my successful clients have taste. They combat delusions, even their own. And they are consistently good people, do the right things, and are thorough and diligent. And actually those three attributes are very hard to come by. And I'm grateful for all of my clients that have that. And those are my clients that I'm making 3 or 4 or 5 things a year with. And they're bouncing between features and digital and all of that. And I think that that's something that, gender aside, female or male, those are attributes that when you are a service-based business, if you can gravitate towards, smart entrepreneurial people that understand the business sense, and the fortunate blessing of the entertainment industry that also have amazing artistic talent and creative taste, it's a great world to be in. And along the way, you meet a lot of jerk producers and rich financiers from Texas who want their daughter to be in a movie, and all of these types of things. But at the end of the day, I think that's what sustains and grows my business, is sort of recognizing talent across the board in that way.
It's almost like you're like a venture capitalist in a sense, because it's all about the people.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, like venture capital, it's about the team when you invest. And when I sit down with a producer, it could be some kid that just graduated from USC Film School last week. But when he's on time to a meeting and he's respectful and he's in a decent outfit, you know what I mean? Like, doesn't look like he just rolled off the boat, and has a presentation and takes it very seriously, I know that this is somebody that I'm going to work with and I'm going to spend my time on, versus, some, 45-year-old that's been making movies the whole time, shows up late to the meeting, yells at me, is rude to my assistant, because Sarah and I are like, this is probably not an ideal client for us, but, it's you definitely go through that process being a service business and learn to take the good with the bad.
And in terms of getting these wonderful women to actually be known in the world outside of this panel, Jamila, how has social media changed all that, even your business?
Well, can you hear me now? Am I loud enough? He told me to speak louder, so I just wanted to make sure. But social media has definitely changed traditional PR. And I'm saying that because I'm a bit of an old school, PR practitioner. I come from like 2006, 2007 is kind of when I started. Actually before that, but if I say any
That's
earlier,
like dark ages.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm showing my age if I say any earlier than that. But it was more so about press releases and really like hardcore pitching and get on the phone. And back when I really was in the thick of it, it was all we had was MySpace. Like that's that's pretty much it. And they've tried to make a comeback now, but it's still really about Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and Pinterest and all those other things now. So basically, the bottom line, Mariana, is that journalists really just don't pick up the phone anymore. I think that's the biggest way that it has changed things. You used to be able to call them up and actually send your pitch, and if they tell you no, you could combat it and say rebuttal, no, and I've gotten a lot of placements by that. I've been able to turn them around with my charm and, my personality.
I've seen her at work, yes.
So you basically just have to, get on Twitter now to get in touch with these people, message them. And I've seen how that works, studying actually what stories they are placing, who they're following and things like that. And that's how you are able to get a response. Is actually following these people on Twitter and their habits and their likes and dislikes. So I've seen a big difference with that.
Did anyone see the tweet we sent from Phoenix this morning about the panel? How about on Facebook? Where is social media when you need it? She created single-handedly.
No, I did. I retweeted it.
You retweet? I know you
Yes.
did, but the audience hasn't seen it. But I'm glad you made it. But it's interesting because they created this basically little campaign this morning. As I said, we're meeting at 3. I got this thing in my inbox saying, oh, you can tweet this or you can Facebook this. It's like a little poster about our panel. So that was a quick PR exercise by the panel, by the capable female panelists. So in terms of what the audience wants to know, is there a question that someone was dying to ask our panel at this point? Okay, think of a question. I have plenty.
Okay.
What was really challenging in becoming an entrepreneur? What is the one thing that you thought, gosh, I wish that I am still, sitting, I was at Sony Pictures or 20th Century Fox, and I have, the 3 assistants and 5 analysts or whatever, my support staff. What was it for you when you had to actually go over into that garage?
Well, I'm going to start with a super short answer on this. I thought at some point it would become self-sustaining. I really thought when I sold a certain number of something, well, for me it was books. I thought then the market would exist, and I can chart exactly my sales along with my efforts, and it's constant, and that's interesting to have
You're
to
waiting
manage.
for that exit strategy, right?
Yeah.
There's one in Silicon Valley. Okay, it's interesting. Hollywood's different. Okay.
I'll share. There's 2 things. One, getting over my own insecurities. Being an entrepreneur is facing every fear that you have, and being okay with crying, being okay with failure, and knowing that there's going to be another day. So that was one of the biggest lessons for me as an entrepreneur. And the second lesson was getting over my ego, because I always think I'm right. And I always think I can push my way through everything. And as my brave partner has taught me, sometimes it's not the time to act. And knowing what you're good at and thinking, well, I'm good at this and I'm just going to act with what I'm good at, doesn't always work. So working in corporate America, they're hiring you for a specific thing that you're good at, and you go out and you do it and you're successful at it. But when you're an entrepreneur, sometimes the skills that you have to wait until that chain in the food cycle of what you're doing is ready for it. I was building technology. It wasn't about going out and doing biz dev and sell, which is what I'm good at. And that's what I thought I was going to do. I was like, oh, rude awakening. Huh? What do you mean I have to learn HTML? What do you mean I have to understand how to talk to developers? It was like a whole new world. Like I literally went back to school and got an MBA, and there's no rule book for it. It's like finding great mentors and really getting out there and knowing that it's okay to fall flat on your ass. You're going to pick yourself up.
I'd roll kind of with what Phoenix said. I think one of the things that's personally most challenging for me is the ups and the downs. One day you feel like you're taking over the world and you're conquering it. And then yesterday I felt like I was the shit on the ground that somebody stepped in. So for me, I don't really like the ups and the downs. And there is literally just an entire shift every day or week or whatever that time frame is. And, going back, like your ego has to be aside. Like I get hung up on all the time. Like, it's fine. You just got to keep pressing forward, because there's people out there that do want what you're offering and they're willing to invest in it, and just keep moving forward. Don't take it personal.
Yeah. Because it's just business.
Sure.
Right?
It's just business.
Just the entrepreneurial business.
Just strictly business. Doesn't mean they don't like you. Just.
I remember I ran an incubator early on in my career. I was just a couple of years out of business school. I was very fortunate. Digital media incubator at KPMG. We had so many resources. My second portfolio company was a guy, NASA Ames Research Incubator in Silicon Valley, and he incubated eBay and Pocket Science Vertical Network. So he raised about 28 rounds of top tier venture capital for 28 out of the 30 startups in that. And he said to me, Mariana, you have no idea, and we had about 30 companies in our incubator, so we were dealing with startups all the time. He said, you have no idea what this is like until you leave the desk and the job and the office and all that, and just try to do it yourself. And he was totally right, because you're not doing anything that you actually have learned how to do, raise money, get revenue in. You're dealing with managerial issues and a person who doesn't want to do their job or doesn't feel like they're getting paid enough yet, even though you have no revenue, right? You're dealing with things that you never thought that HR used to deal with, right?
Right. You are HR.
You're dealing with who's paid for the office space this month, right? Is the fax machine on?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And it's just the minutia of that is kind of interesting, right?
And there's something else also. I have a second book coming out next month called Success as a Second Language. I own the trademark on the phrase as a second language for self-help books. So my first one was happiness as a second language. The next one's success as a second language. There's going to be it's going to be the chicken soup for the soul, I swear. I hope. But there's a whole section in there that says changing direction is not failure. And that is what we have to get out of our brains, this idea that if you got so far and it didn't work and you did something else, that is success driven. It is not a failure to say, this didn't work, I'm going to do something else. It is a big failure to stick with what's not working because you're either embarrassed to change or because you can't, your ego is telling you this must work. So, you know, when you change direction, that's success. And even if it's, you know, saying, okay, I've been a screenwriter for 10 years, now I think I'll write books. That is not failing in one field. That is pursuing success in a different field. And it's one of the best things you can do.
And using it's the same skills that you have.
Yeah.
You know, and these additional ones about, you know, kind of cleaning up the office.
Yeah.
Okay. So any comments, Elsa, what was really challenging in starting this business other than being on the back lot
That was rough.
without getting paid?
No
toilet.
I think just to add, I just think the biggest thing is the look. I don't look at failure as failure. I think that early on, I'm really hard on myself. Any type A woman owning her own business or involved in entrepreneur is probably as equally crazy as I am. That's the only thing that drives it to keep going. But the one thing about being that type A crazy manic, like, you know, you have to-do lists and everything, is that every mistake, error, or negative experience I have learned has been an opportunity to take from it. And I always make sure I'm accountable and I take ownership. If, you know, my associate makes a mistake, it's my mistake and I take full responsibility. It's because I didn't train them or I didn't double check it or whatever. And so I agree that failure is not failure, it's evolution. And when you're an entrepreneur, it's you literally have like this entire garbage bag or bag of things that you get to take along the way, and it makes you stronger, better, more profitable. And it just, having now had done this 10 years, I just love to be in a position to just know instinctively, I don't want to sign that type of client because that's the type of guy that's not going to pay me, or I know that this lawyer is going to be a certain way. And so I'm going to wait until I have all my cards ready before I call them. So that experience and being able to put that in your reserve, and that's in your bank account, you know, both physically and intangibly, is I think a great benefit to being an entrepreneur.
So the same guy, John G., who was my mentor, who ran that NASA Ames Research Incubator, used to say to me, there are 4 reasons why startups fail. And I was, you know, kind of 2 years out of business school, I'm taking notes. He says, number 1 reason is lack of capital, lack of access to capital. I'm writing it down. Then he says, number 2 is people. Number 3 is people. And number 4 is people. So then I'll take your next. And then I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, well, the CEO is going to fire the board. The board's going to fire the CEO. One of the founders will fire the other 2. The other 2 will fire the third one, and so on and so forth. And I was like, there's no way. These people are all so accomplished. It all happened. Since then, I've seen it all. So what are some of the challenges, I would say, with human capital in these companies in terms of trying to grow, nurture, develop relationships with the board, with the other founders? What are some of the challenges in dealing with all that?
I think the largest one, if I could jump in, is execution. I think that's missing in so many companies. And what I like to say to my team is, today, like tomorrow's a new day, but we have to hit execution every single day. The only way I know that my company is going to make it is if they make X amount of calls, they close this amount of contracts, and I know those numbers. And we have to do it day after day after day.
So you have to set goals and you have to actually meet them.
Yeah, absolutely. Set them and meet them. And I think that's the challenge is you need to get this done, or you have a fussy client, you need to focus on this, like prioritizing and knowing, well, I can get to the fussy client at the end of the day, and I'm going to make 30 more calls now to get new business in, because that's what's going to drive my company.
Because the revenue matters every day.
Every day.
Yeah, we're going through it right now. We have a team of developers where we hired everyone. We told them this is a startup, and we expect everybody to understand the startup mentality. And you know, that's the type of people that we need to hire right now, because we're on a push to launch. We have investors and clients and everyone to answer to, and we actually just lost a developer. We just had to let the team know today that one of our developers is leaving. They're leaving for a better job that's 9 to 5, and it sucks. And you know, the interesting thing was that I think we quickly identified that he is a 9 to 5 person, and that's just what he's going to be, even if he took the job in a startup.
And as a developer, you can be that if you wanted
it's okay to
right?
be that. You know,
because you can.
Yeah, because you can. But being a boss and knowing what the bottom line is and knowing all the things that they don't see, which is investors and bottom lines and making sure that everybody can still get a paycheck next month. It's not stuff that they're privy to. And it's like balancing your own emotion with all of that, as well as dealing with being the boss and having to keep the ship moving, I think is a big challenge.
It's very
as
challenging,
entrepreneur.
especially with some of the employee types that you identified, like developers, for example, who are getting premiums in the market in terms
They
of.
have headhunters chasing them every day. I mean, he looked at us and said, honestly, I'm taking this job. And to be honest, over the last 4 months, every day I get emailed.
Yep.
And we're a startup. Like, we can't compete with that, you know? So it's
He's going to be so sad when you go public.
you know, he's a great guy and I wish him all the best. I understand he's a 9-to-5 guy, and he's being given an opportunity and we're being given a favor. Like, we're going to now be able to go out with what we've learned over this last 7 months of the team and really pick somebody that actually really is there for what we need, as opposed to this is just a team that we need to put together right now.
But also, I want to caution for, again, back to the male brain developed for hierarchical structure, for an understanding of hierarchy. If you're in combat, you know there's a guy in charge, I answer to him, boom. Or same thing when you're hunting. The female brain developed around a campfire with consensus. We don't have an innate sense of hierarchy. In the book, I'm not going to go into it, there's a study of 6-year-old boys that shows 6-year-old boys understand hierarchy within their play group, and 6-year-old girls have absolutely no sense of hierarchy. And the chapter is there's no I in team. There's also no BOSS. It's really hard for women to understand I'm the boss, I'm above you, my way goes. We apologize for doing that. We want the employee to agree with us. Like, I'm going to tell you to do this. Is that okay? It's like, it doesn't matter if it's okay.
You want their buy-in. It's almost like, right, instead of just participation.
I taught at Berkeley Law in 2010, and I realized pretty quickly that none of the law professors had ever practiced law. And so I took an hour out of my class to teach my students, this is what it means when you're a lawyer and you have an assistant. And your paralegal is not your equal, which and your assistant doesn't need to hear about your crazy weekend because she's going to stop respecting you. And this was there were a lot of conflicts I had with my assistant when I first came out of school because I didn't know how to manage that relationship. And when I explained to the class, this is how you have to manage your assistant, the men already all got it. They thought this was a waste of time. Right. The female students resisted what I was saying so much to the point one of them complained about it in my evaluation at the end, saying she told us we're supposed to talk down to our assistants. Like, no, that is not at all what I said. But women have a very hard time saying, I'm in charge here. And you have to, if you're an entrepreneur, you have to be able to do that, and you have to be able to do it without apologizing. So
yeah, I had to learn that hard. Well, I learned that through him.
Yeah, and we learn it from men. We learn it from watching men.
Not to single you out or anything. Yeah. We love having you here.
This is really fascinating. I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
Chat with you.
There's a chat on how to work with female co-founders, right?
Someone has a question.
Yes.
I have a question about your specific. I am a female CEO, and I am the founder of 411 Music Group, so a music company. And about what you said about our brains working differently than men, and they. I guess my question is, what's the answer? Are we to conform to the way that men instinctually think? After millions of years, or our collaborators instinctually, and we want a consensus. And there are statistics on like female-driven companies are more successful in a lot of ways, and there's just math about it. Is it the other way around? Instead of thinking that we need to conform to be more like men and running a company that way, versus the way that we instinctually do it, and it ends up being more successful?
That's a great question.
That's a great question. I want to know the answer.
So I will share one. Show us the answer. And you know what? I want to hear. I would rather hear from you. I'd rather hear what your thought is on that.
Well, first of all, so I think the answer. Look, we're partners in this business, and this is something we struggle with in the day.
And in life.
Partners in life. It gets blurred between what's personal and what's business. But it definitely is fodder for growth and like really understanding this thing. I'm so fascinated with your study because I think that's the answer, is knowing what the root causes are.
Yeah.
Because if we know what that is, then we can collaborate with our strengths. And she can actually know when she's putting me in peril as the guy because I'm in war zone. Because when she's starting a fire with other men, they're not going to fight her, they're going to fight me. And that's where we get into conflict. It's like, why did you just do that? Now I have to like, protect the whole neighborhood. So it's understanding, and I think it's like really supporting each other. You're like, oh, that's what she's doing, and for her to know, oh, don't do that. Make sure that because we are still sort of stuck.
And in general, like going off, I totally agree with that. Like instead of making it a gender thing, saying this is your strength, this is your strength, and knowing the strengths and weaknesses, like you just said, would make a very powerful dynamic.
But awareness is really important. I'm not going to share this story. I just got kicked off a committee at the Writers Guild, and me and another woman got kicked off this committee, and the 5 rich white men who were in charge didn't like that we were telling them that they weren't doing a good job.
Oh no.
And literally their solution to being told that they weren't doing a good job running this committee was to remove the 2 of us from this committee. But as soon as it all went down, I looked back at everything that had happened and I went, oh my God, I should have, I of all people should have realized from the very first email interchange, this was about the hierarchy. This was about us violating their sense of hierarchy. And I could have handled it very differently and gotten a very different outcome. My husband is thrilled. He's done with me being on Writers Guild committees. So it all worked out.
Because it's a lot of time.
Yes, but to specifically answer your question of the way I address it in my talk and in the book is that right now in most industries, women are in almost all industries, women are at less than 20% in the upper ranks. In STEM industries and in Hollywood industries, women are less than 10% in the upper ranks. So as much as we want to say,
even more.
tech is 3%, yeah, for the top. Yeah.
Going.
So as much as we want to say, look, our way of doing it is better, we have to get into those positions. And so my whole thing is about awareness. Be aware of what you're coming up against, but also, God, be aware when something is just instinctual, like where women are swimming against the current because the entire system was structured based, not for men, but based by men. Yeah, based on what they were already good at. If you're going to build a system from the ground up, it's going to reward what you're good at. Who do we value more in society? The guys who can put out fires or the ones who prevent fires?
But her question is very good. I think it was about the internal workings of the company as demonstrated here. But what about externally? Because you're going to talk to this community, like your committee, right? Well, and then you have to kind of shift gears and behave within that ecosystem.
I think Elsa probably has to deal with that more than any of us, because I don't know a more male-dominated industry. and not just male-dominated, but like, I swear to God, every meeting I was in, they started out pulling them out and measuring them. I was like, oh, dear God. So what is your experience?
I think one of the most important things for me is that entertainment lawyers are mainly old white dudes. That's just how it is. And so it has a few effects. One is there's certain clients that I meet with that automatically look at me and say, she's young, she's female, she's not quite white, not for me. And being aware is important because I can't take that personally and I can feel it. And so oftentimes it's just a filter thing and I don't take any, offense. That's just who they are. It's not my problem. And on the lawyer side, the important thing for me was, look, I could be this is not my system. It's a man's system. And I was treated very poorly when I first started out. I was called terrible names by lawyers. And part of it, honestly, was I was young and I kind of didn't know what I was doing. And I had balls on me that I probably shouldn't have had. And I was asserting myself. And so it would piss a lot of people off. And so, but if I were at that moment in time to be like, well, I'm a woman and they're a man and this is an unfair system for me, and get all caught up in that is such a distractor. That's exactly what men that are in your WJ committee want you to do. They want you to be like, I'm a woman and I'm being suffered and I don't have leverage. Who cares? The point is that in the context and in my world, it's, I have to do a good job for my client. I have to be fearless, even in the context of sexism, racism, whatever ism they want to throw at me. And if I'm doing my job well, then I'll succeed in it. And sometimes I will get an unfair outcome. But the nice thing about doing good at your job in any industry, and even in the entertainment industry, there are lawyers that were so mean to me 10 years ago. And now I have a seat at the table. Like, game's up. Like, if I call them, they have to deal with me. They have to be respectful to me. And I never once had to be rude to them. I never once had to call them out on them being terrible to me. I never had to play the female card. I was just myself, male or female energy aside, and I did my job well. And at that point, the gender neutrality does step in. I think when you have success, gender neutrality does occur and it starts to dissolve, and you go, okay, I'm a woman and he's a man and these are the differences, but I'm good at my job and I'm on the phone with you and you have to treat me as a peer and a colleague, irrespective of gender. So that, I think, does happen with success and hard work.
We had a question back there.
I've been a journalist for many, many years. And I don't think I will ever forget this part. And, Ms. Alexander, I'm going to buy your book today.
Thank you.
And on all your research, when do you think men will disappear?
Oh God, I hope never. I really like them.
I think that the systems are evolving so that we're looking at the traits that are best for the organization rather than the best for any one group of individuals. And I think that's true across genders. I think that's true across races. I think that's true across cultural barriers. We are now in is it Malcolm's still world is flat?
Thomas Friedman.
Okay, Thomas Friedman wrote The World is Flat. Okay, we are now the cover designer of my book is in India, and these are the things that we can do now. So where if he were to walk into a room in Hollywood, he wouldn't get hired.
Right.
But it doesn't matter.
Right.
Now systems are evolving for greater efficiency rather than to reward the people who created the system. I think that's a huge thing. But I do want to go back to one point that's really important. Women beat ourselves up for not succeeding when it's it's distinctly possible. I mean, you had people who were being mean to you, and there might have been setbacks that you faced as a result of that for. And we have to also stop. There's a thing called the imposter syndrome. I don't know if any of you have ever heard this, where a woman in a successful position starts saying, I don't belong here. Yeah, I'm a fraud. The entire time I was both practicing law and as an investment banker, I was in this constant, I'm a fraud mode. When are they going to realize? Mimi Leader, who was the Emmy-winning director of ER. She was Steven Spielberg was handpicked choice to direct the first 2 movies that DreamWorks made. Does that before the beginning of every film. She walks around her house saying, "Oh, I'm a fraud. I don't belong. They don't show up and take it away from me." And she's given me permission to share that story, by the way. But that's what women do, and it's because we're swimming against the current.
But I wonder if it's all of us or just the really successful ones.
I think the ones who are in the fields where our natural instincts aren't rewarded. Yeah. And if you're in a field where your natural instincts are rewarded, you're fine. You're swimming with the current and you think you're the best swimmer in the world. And if you're swimming against the current, you're looking over at the person who's swimming with the current and you're like, wow, that person's a really good swimmer. If only I could swim as good as they do. It's not, so don't do that to yourself.
You would be better than them because you're going against the current and they're right next to you.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I want to jump in and weigh in really quick on what Valerie was saying. I think sometimes, and I can say this because I am a mother, but I think that sometimes we get that kind of, I don't belong here because we feel guilty, because we're taking time away from our family, our children. And I know that I've felt that, so many times. And it's like, you just have to learn a healthy balance between your career and your family and know that what you're doing is going to benefit your family as well. What you're doing in your career, if you have to take some time away, to go to a meeting or to be out of town for business, that it's for, the greater good of your family as well as a whole.
So in all of these companies that have really built tremendous success in the last couple of decades, like Google was like a number 17 search engine in 2002, I remember. It was like, Alta Vista was up there and it's nowhere to be found. So back then, those companies were really not in a hierarchical structure of today. How did they get there yet again in even shorter and shorter and shorter, like Groupons of the world and Facebooks of the world, in a very short amount of time, this structure that you're describing gets recreated? Why?
I think Groupon's probably the best example.
I'm a little bit confused on what you're asking.
This whole male-female hierarchical structure,
Right.
as the new companies get born,
Right.
Like we have this new platform here on the panel and your company. Why did they become hierarchical right away? Like
You
within
mean
how
like why
far-
was I the only woman sitting at the table? Okay.
Were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
My personal thought is that it starts when you're born, and it starts again with the peer groups that you're in and who you're hanging out with and who you're associating with. So I had brothers. I wanted to do everything that they were doing. I wanted to do everything they were doing better. It was always that scenario for me. So I think that structure in any company is really important. And, you know, one thing, like people are always asking, like, why aren't there women in tech? Like, why aren't there women in development? Because their friends aren't in it, right?
Yeah.
And your friends aren't in it. You're not open to those opportunities. You know, entrepreneurs, they say that women have a lot harder time finding funding because they're not in the same, you know, the same circles. They're not going out to dinner with somebody that has, you know, that's a banker or has that firm behind them. And so what I think is that it starts when you're young, and, you know, just as you get older, the seas just separate even more.
And then when will this shift?
I think it's shifting.
It is shifting, but not
numbers wise.
When I was practicing, my first law firm was in Chicago, and I had a partner that I worked for, and he told me at one point that he's like, "You do the best work of anyone. This is so awesome." And he said, "Is there anything more that you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about business development, which is all of surviving as a lawyer is being able to bring in clients." I said, "I don't know anything about business development. I would like more information about that." And he said to me, this is in 1994. Okay, this wasn't 1954. In 1994, he said, "Oh, I do all my business development on the golf course, and I won't golf with women. They slow down the game."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with like your social network, who you're around, who you're comfortable with.
Phoenix and I were just having this conversation. Women don't help each other out.
Yeah, that is true.
I didn't know how bad we were at it until I got married and I watched what happened with my husband and his friends. It's like one of his friends would get a new job as an executive, and the first thing he does is opens up his Rolodex and calls all his friends and says, "This is what we're buying right now. What can you bring me?" Mm-hmm. I had a friend who got a job as an executive, and I looked at what their company was making, and I had 2 scripts that fit perfectly into their mandate. And I called her and I said, "Hey, I have 2 scripts. Can I bring them to you?" And she said to me, "Oh, it's way too early for me to start bringing in friend scripts. Give me about a year so I can get some hits under my belt, and then we can talk about it."
Wow.
Yeah.
That is the difference between the way men approach business and the way women approach business. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go.
Oh, but I want to say, I was going to ask earlier about, had any of you done athletics, like as a young?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a team mentality from athletics competition. And I think that a lot of the women who bring their own like experience from that into the business do open those Rolodex, do bring in that. So I think a lot of the women, girls, young girls didn't pursue those avenues. And thus that is in the areas in which you're doing your business, like in that culture of thought.
I also think, and I also think the other thing is that I've learned, it's kind of a landmark term, but conversational domain. It's about going out and learning the conversational domain of what your interests, like what you're interested in. I had to go out. I called VCs. I called lawyers. I called everybody that I could possibly call. I called the executive vice president of H&R Block. And he's like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "It doesn't matter. I need your help." My mother always told me, "God gave you a mouth. Use it." The worst thing someone can say is no. But at the end of the day, it's about conversational domain. If you want to know about something and you want to be better at something, you need to surround yourself, like you said, with the people and the conversations that are going to become natural to you at some point as a part of that conversational domain.
But also not being dismissive of people who you think might not lead you to your goal. Because my first job in the business was as an agent assistant, and I was the assistant to the owner of a talent agency, and I sat in the front of the office. And so I appeared to be the receptionist, even though I was the assistant. So, I was like one step up from a receptionist, but I appeared to be the receptionist. And we represented only actors, and actors would come through the door and blow by me and just, drop things on my desk and not say hello and treat me like really something bad. Yeah, garbage. Until they found out that, and they would not find out from me, they would just find out from talking to other people, that my boss, the owner of the agency, was rarely ever in the office. She had a lot of medical problems, which she didn't want to be common knowledge, but I was the one doing the submissions on everybody. I did the breakdowns every day. I negotiated contracts with casting, with networks and all. And then the tables would turn and you could see people were in the office. You could see that moment. And then they'd try to confuse me with niceness and bring me presents and, and it's like, well, why can't you just be nice all the time? You never know. The person who might appear to be the janitor or whoever could really be doing community service for something, or could be, you just don't know. Yeah, you just don't know. So
I'll take the question back.
The brown
there.
jacket.
No, she was.
I want to say they don't have an empathy, and I love.
Hold on, she's next. Hold that second. Hold.
I'm an HR exec and a writer, and this has been such a dynamic panel, and I'm so glad I have 7 potential weeks of features to do on.
Awesome.
Being in HR, women versus men give increases so differently. Tell me your philosophy on what is your thought process when you're giving increases to your staff, whether it be lower level, higher, or middle management.
I can speak from experience of managing hundreds of people. The men always ask for it. And I always give it to the men because they ask for it. If a woman asks for it, I'll give it to a woman.
But
9 times out of 10, the people who are knocking on my door are the men.
Were there women that asked?
Oh yeah, but
Oh,
1
thank
out of
God.
10. 1 out of 10
That's
is a woman
good.
that asks. So 1 out of 10 times I'm rewarding them, but I'm not gonna. You have to ask for it. Like, you have to put yourself in that position. Come to me with what you've done. Come to me with what you've created for this company and the value that you provided, and I'm happy to look at it.
And how
But I'm
to
not,
professional.
if I'm managing hundreds of people, I don't have the time to seek out everybody. Like, you have to be putting yourself in front of the person that's making the
And you have
decision.
to manage your own brand, which
Exactly.
is, I think we didn't get to. I was talking earlier with some of you. Even though there may be a CEO, founder, or within a larger company right now, there is a personal brand here that's attached to each one of these panelists and each one of us here in this room that has to be managed as well. And that's part of management. Go ahead. You're next. Sorry.
So you're talking about some of the challenges, but also, that women in business or in general are very consensus oriented. And Valerie, you mentioned how when men, the executive comes into his position, he opens up his Rolodex and he's like, "Come on in," and that women aren't like that.
Yeah. Right.
So, I mean, whether you found it in your study or anybody has a theory why that might be, and whether or not that would be a valuable thing for us to overcome. Like, we want to keep going with the flow of the current, right?
Yeah.
Because that's just somehow that's a benefit, or do we actually want to alter that? And if so, how that would actually benefit us all?
No. We have to start. First off, the men assume we're doing it. The men think we're doing it for each other, so they're not doing
not
it
helping
for
for
us.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
so
fear,
they're just-
though.
It's fear.
It's
It's
fear.
100% fear. The analogy I use in the talk is German Shepherds and Golden Retrievers. If you are the only Golden Retriever at the table, you start sitting there for like, oh, hope they don't notice I'm a Golden Retriever. Like, I can hang with these shepherds, and then another Golden Retriever shows up, and you're like, shit, that other Golden Retriever's here. Maybe they're going to notice I'm a Golden Retriever too. Or God forbid, this is the worst thing women do to each other. We don't help each other when we're struggling.
Yep.
Because the one thing you try to do is like, oh, that Golden Retriever is going to do badly and it's going to make me look bad. That's there's actually a thing I discovered there's a racial stereotyping syndrome, I think is what it's called. It's where people of different races, people of a non-majority race, feel like if they do something wrong, the weight is greater and because they feel like they're representing their whole race.
Yeah, I mean, I could say that. Yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And damn black people did it again.
And so the risk is they'll take much smaller risks. Yeah. So when you're in a minority, whether it's because you're a woman or because you're a minority race, you're not willing to take the risks that other people take, not only because your failure is less likely to be forgiven, but also because you feel like you're representing a larger class.
Yeah.
And so what we have to do is we have to say, oh, I'm bringing all the golden retrievers in.
Heck yeah.
Deal with them. And we don't do that because it's so fear-based, and we just have to stop.
Could it in fact be like?
Can you raise your hand? I'm sorry, there's a bunch of other people. Go ahead. Yes.
Just briefly on that, there is actually genetic research which explains this to an extent, because as women, we have to make very careful choices with what we do with our genetic resources in our lives. And so just in the same way that we choose our male partners very carefully, we also choose the women around us, and we're competing with other women. And so there is actually a very strong biological impetus for women to not cooperate. And that is the basis of that
Interesting.
Of why it is that men in hierarchies will collaborate. They're not competing with each other,
right?
But women are, and I think that the onus on us is to step up and say, okay, whatever my brain or my biology is saying, let me see if there are women here that I can help and who can help me.
Right, which we should, but I will also say, as a screenwriter, I would have meetings for television staffing and be told, oh shoot, we really like you, but we already hired a woman.
Oh my goodness.
And again, not more than 5 years ago.
Wow. You have to deal with that. I mean,
right.
You know, it's the onus is on the person who's saying that to you for being sexist.
Right, but what I'm saying is that means I'm not going to help out any other female screenwriters. Right. If I know for a fact that every show is only hiring one woman writer, I'm not passing anybody's name on to any other. Yeah, exactly. So that's where that comes in.
I truly think if we can move past the mentality that it's competition and it's just, you know what? Because I know that I go through this sometimes with my partners. We got an investor. Other people come along and they're like, oh, I'm looking for an investor. If I feel intuitively like this person needs to meet our investor, so what if he invested in us? Go meet our investor. You know, it's not a competition, because at the end of the day, it's about what you show up and you do. If that person falls in love with you and loves your product, they're going to invest in you. And I remember somebody said to me one day, you made all these contacts because of me. And I said, you know what? I made all these contacts because I was supposed to make all these contacts. It doesn't matter whether you introduced me to them or somebody else's. I met them because I was supposed to. So we can't stand in the way of somebody else's success. We have to support each other and giving and raising each other up, because at the end of the day, it's not about me. I'm just a conduit to support somebody else in their success.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you said that. We were talking about this earlier, Valerie and I, before the panel, and I was telling her how before I started my company and I would talk to people about what I should do, they were telling me I should get a mentor, you know, a woman who has the job that I want. So I was seeking out, you know, VPs in PR and publicity, and they really didn't want to have anything to do with me. You know, it was just like, I don't know if it was like, what did you say, Elsa, that I'm young and I'm not quite white? Or but it's like if you're young and, like you said, not quite white and, you know, maybe kind of cute, then they don't really.
You're gorgeous.
Women that were older, the women, they didn't want to have anything to do with me. And then it's like you try to get a male mentor, and that's a totally different story. Then they're hitting on you, you know. So it's I think it's just women. I don't know why we don't want to help each other.
She said it. You know, it's genetics.
Yeah.
But
well,
can I just want to say,
guess.
like, I hear everybody, and when I start, I mean, but at the same time, 10 years ago, I was like this kid coming from San Diego, and you do find 1 out of 20 women that give you the time of day. And one thing I've done since I started my business is, like, not everybody helped me. Not everybody would take my call, but I'm very emphatic about giving women the power of knowing that they have these opportunities in front of them. So since I remember, I've had female interns that were in law school that never thought they could be entertainment lawyers, and they see me doing it and emulating it. And, you know, yesterday I met with 2 girls, and they're girls. They're 25. They just started their own law firm, and they came into my office with like a list of questions. And honestly, I did not have the 30 minutes, but I try to just open my door. And these are women now that are in the industry, working in-house, and they're calling me and helping me out and sending me clients, because 8 years ago, I was like the one person that responded to them. So I do feel like the first thing is, what can I do to open the door? And like, that's so important to me. And I try to commit to it every day. And it's even with my employees that are women also, I try to kind of say, okay, what do you want to do when you grow up? Like, I know you don't want to be my assistant forever. So it's like just taking the first step, I think, is really important. And it's had a tremendous impact on my career.
And
because
even
I've been doing it for so
having
long.
that attitude with both men and women is just an openness, because when everybody unless your parent or your sibling is somebody famous and successful, you're going to start at the very bottom. And we have people in our office, or a couple of PAs who are in their 30s, just because of the circumstances, and they are so thrilled when they're included in a meeting or something like that. Everybody just wants to be validated with, that's just human nature. So.
Well, I want to thank our panelists. I know that all of you want to ask them questions. There's a cocktail reception right after the pool, and they'll hopefully join us. But I want to thank them. We're 10 minutes late getting out of the room. We're shutting the place down. Thank you for being a great audience and even better panelists. Thank you.
Okay, we need to exchange cards. Need to exchange cards.
Yes.
I want to know more about your project. Yeah. Is it like, so think of it this way. Social? No, think of it this way.